I'd like to call to order the September meeting of the New Bern Board of Adjustments. Could we have a roll call?
Kit Paragoy.
Here.
Richard Parsons.
Here.
Dorothea White.
Here.
Alfred Barfield. Peter Dillon.
Here.
Jim Morrison.
Here.
John Riggs.
Here.
Barbara Sampson.
Here.
John Merrill, excused. Ross Beebe.
I'm here.
Thank you.
I'm not on the board tonight, right?
Jonathan
present.
Foster.
Present.
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Do we need to seat one of the alternates since there's 7 of us up here?
7, 6, 7. Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Come on up. I thought we had 8. All right.
Okay, we have a quorum established, and tonight's business has 2 items on the agenda, but I want to announce that agenda item B, which is the consideration of a special use permit for a 40-slip marina, will be eliminated from tonight's agenda. So if there's folks in the audience that were wanting to participate in that discussion that we would have about that marina, that will not be heard tonight. The original meeting of that to hear that topic was scheduled for the August meeting, and the Board of Aldermen could not get a quorum together to hear that, and we have been working with the applicant and there are assorted experts that they were going to present to find an appropriate date to reschedule that. And that will be rescheduled for the 15th of October at 6 o'clock here in the City Hall. So.
Question. You worked with their side to set that date, but you didn't consult anyone else. Is that true?
Staff?
It's
so many times, we understand that. But when we, of course, were not notified that this meeting was to happen tonight because according to your rules, once you cancel, you don't notify us again. So they have the advantage of knowing what you're doing, but we residents did not. So could we ask that we also be notified when this meeting will be exactly so that we are here once again?
Yes, ma'am. And like I say, this meeting will adjourn I'm not adjourned, but they will be continued to August 15th at 6 o'clock. October, thank you. 6 o'clock here. Yes, ma'am. That's advance notice, but I think we can probably change, we probably want to change the notice sign.
We'll change the sign, yes, sir.
Yeah, that's out there to, again, confirm for everyone.
You said that you were eliminating it. I mean, my understanding is that you're going to continue it. Is that the terminology?
That's a terminology issue on my part, Sarah. It is being removed from tonight's agenda.
It is being
Continued from, yes.
Until October.
Yes. That issue will not be heard this evening.
It's still on the agenda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because this agenda will be continued until October 15th.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Hello. Is there any documentation that can be used at the next meeting that may be different from previously submitted?
Jeff, did you hear that question?
No, we did not.
No, sir. That's all the documentation is consistent with what had been submitted for the August 26th meeting.
Yeah, that was the question. All the documentation's been, it is, what we have is what's in the packet.
Are we allowed to have a list of who their expert witnesses are going to be?
I wouldn't say you're not allowed, but I don't have the information, so I can't give it to you. If we want to have this conversation after the next item, it would probably be more germane instead of.
Well, I just wanted to give these
Yeah.
folks an opportunity to not sit here and go through the first item on the agenda. If they so choose, you're more than welcome to stay, but if
Will there
you,
be any further discussion on this question tonight?
no, sir, there will not be.
Fine, thank you.
Okay. Okay, for those that do remain, let me go through what was going to be happening tonight at the hearing on agenda item A. The Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial board. Consequently, everyone who wishes to speak at tonight's hearing must be sworn in before speaking. The second important aspect of being a quasi-judicial board is that we may only consider substantial and material evidence, facts, in our decision-making process. We cannot accept hearsay, opinions, or emotions. The first step in the hearing process is for the application for the special use permit to be presented to the board by the city staff. Following staff presentation, the board will begin to solicit facts concerning 6 requirements specified by law. After each of the 6 requirements, there will be a public comment period where evidence will be presented to the board. After all 6 items have been presented, evidence heard, and closing comments made, the board will deliberate and vote on each of the requirements, one at a time. Following the voting, the board will vote whether to approve or deny the application. The first order of business is the consideration of a special use permit request to allow a multifamily use at 309 Pollock Street. The subject property is further identified as Craven County parcel 8-001C090. If anyone would like to participate in the public comment session, they will need to be sworn in. If you will step forward to the podium, Mr. Ruggieri will swear you in.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear any evidence you give tonight is true to the best of your knowledge? If so, say I do.
I do.
Jeff, would you like to introduce this
Sure.
request for special use permit?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you introduced the project, it is a project at 309 Pollock Street, right across the street from City Hall here. The request is to create a 13-unit multifamily use there at the branch's furniture store, essentially. It is existing zoning is C1, Central Business District. The request is to allow 13 multifamily units, relatively small size, 0.7 acres, and right now it is predominantly used as commercial use. There's the aerial imagery of it, again, right across the street from us. Everyone's very familiar with the site. Existing zoning, it's right at the cusp there between C1 and C2, and it is C1. It is, as you can see, the multifamily is a special use request or a special use permit in the C1 zoning district. So the project was approved by the city's Departmental Site Plan Review Committee. The applicant has made all the required changes to the site plan as recommended by staff. The staff finds the proposed project is consistent with the plan's rules and regulations of the city of New Bern with no further changes required. I can give our recommendation if you'd like, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Okay. According to section 15-146 of the land use ordinance, multifamily uses must obtain a special use permit to operate in the C1 special business district zoning classification. Staff finds that the applicant has met all land use ordinance requirements of section 1554 for a special use permit and therefore recommends approval of this request.
Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Would the applicant like to come forth and give us a general overview of what is being requested? Please state your name and address, please.
name's Sarah Asselbach with Go Architectural Design, and this project has been before the HPC with a unanimous vote, and also for departmental review, and we've met all those requirements. The building was built in 1865 and is currently the Branch's Furniture Store. This is an original image of the building, and what we're proposing as part of this project is to open up the windows on the front facade, and within the existing envelope of the building, create 13 rental units. Currently, Branch's Furniture Store has two buildings, kind of side by side, and they currently have 4 rental units that they rent out in a similar fashion that they would like to within, on this side. So a portion of the ground floor would remain retail and have that storefront as it is now, with an exit to the street in the front and an exit in the rear. Just to orient you, just some images of the front and the rear of the building right now, and it's actually really pretty awesome. There's an attic space up in the building that shows the outline of the existing windows that we plan to reopen. Right now, this is Pollock Street right here, and this right here is the existing building. There are currently 4 spaces in the rear, and what happens now when people come in and they check in, they drive into these spaces, they drop off bags, things like that, and then they go and park elsewhere in the city. And we want to continue that practice for this project. Parking is not required in the central business district per the ordinance, but we are obviously sensitive to how that will work, and just wanted to share with you that's how it's working now. There have been no issues with folks, neighbors, any complaints like that. So on the ground floor, we'd have 3 units, and then on the upper floors, so this is Pollock Street, 3 units on the first floor with retail, and then on the upper floors, 6 units on the second floor, and on the top floor, another 4 units. And they would have a rear exit stair out of that building. In going through the application, the first requirement that we have been through HPC and departmental review and met all those requirements of the ordinance, and that there are existing multifamily units within this facility that, kind of go towards David Blythe as an owner. He is present, he will be there, he is part of this project, and intends to maintain that personal, hands-on with the project all the way through. For us, it was kind of interesting and important that you could capture the space within the entire building and really get a higher and better use out of this project than is currently there. Currently, there is 1 floor of furniture. You've probably been into Branches. There's kind of an open, it opens up to the second floor. There's a balcony with some other furniture. And the 3rd floor, you wouldn't even know is there. But it's very cool. It's built like an old ship. And we've got the engineers working on how to encapsulate all that space and not have to go outside of that envelope. So for us to capture that space really is putting all of that to a better use than is currently what we estimate as 1 floor of mercantile. And that's really a pretty good overview. David Blythe wanted to say just a couple of words about the project as well.
I'm just glad to present it, and have, worked with Sarah for years to try to develop something on this property, and we thank God for unanswered prayers, because I think this is it. Going to be the best use, like Sarah said. Going to enhance the downtown experience that people come for. Every review, if you look on any of the sites where I do rentals currently, there's not 1 negative review in a 2.5-year period of renting. Everything has been positive. Just pleased to
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we will begin the six-step process to fulfill our legal requirements for a special use permit. And during this process, we will also have a period of public comment after each one of these, during each one of these 6 segments that we talk about. The first requirement for issuing a special use permit is that the requested permit is within its jurisdiction according to the table of permissible uses.
You want me to answer that? Mr. Chair, you waiting for my answer?
Yes, or Roy, the applicant.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, sir. It's your testimony.
I think you've already commented on this, but please, for the record, do it again.
Yeah, the only reason that we are coming is that multifamily is required in the table of permissible uses for C1 for a special use permit.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on item number 1? If not, we'll move on to item number 2, and that is the application is complete. The question is, the application is complete. And Jeff, we can hear from you too on this one.
Sure. Mr. Chair, members of the board, the application is complete.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on requirement number 2 about the application? If not, we'll move on to item number 3, requirement number 3. If completed as proposed in the application, the development will comply with all the requirements of this ordinance. Applicant, would you like to comment?
Again, just that we've been through the Historic Preservation Commission departmental review and, have both of those processes are meant to catch anything that would stand out in the ordinance that is not appropriate, and we have passed those successfully.
Can I ask a question at this point? Probably to you, Jeff. The ordinance of the parking requirement at C1 in downtown, if you went to the ordinance and looked at multifamily or rental, you would be requiring 15, 18 parking spaces.
Right.
But there is an exception in the C1. Could you explain that to the board?
Yeah, there is a section in our code, I was reading it this morning, that exempts parking essentially in the C1 and C2 areas of downtown as delineated in the code itself, where there is no required parking. And this area falls in that overlay of not having, not being required any parking.
15,343.
Thank you. I knew it wasn't in the parking section.
The earlier, it was mentioned, Sarah, that you had 4 rental units currently,
Yes.
and you have 4 parking places.
Well, those parking places are not used by those rental units.
Okay, where have those people been parking?
They, you went,
I have two types of visitors. One is a business visitor that comes during the week. They come in the afternoon. After 2 o'clock, there's no enforcement until 10 a.m. the next morning, which works perfectly for our daytime customers and our evening customers. So my typical business traveler will come in 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, check-ins at 3. There's no parking requirement until 10 a.m. My typical business customer is at work by 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, and no enforcement is needed or in place until 10 a.m. So that business traveler parks at night, gets up in the morning and leaves. My other customer, the other 50%, is a tourist. My typical tourist comes in town for a wedding event, let's say. Will come into town on even a Thursday afternoon. They are told by me, this is drop off, pick up, 2-hour enforced parking. If they come on a Thursday afternoon, they'll park in the afternoon. They move by 10 a.m. They might run their errands before the wedding. Once Friday at 2 o'clock comes, there's no enforcement until 10 a.m. on Monday morning. There are the instances, of course, during the week where I have a tourist that comes into town, someone visiting family that needs a place to park. That's where I do have 4 spaces, and every now and then I'll let one park back there. And then there are 4 lots that they also park in that are 24-hour lots. I do have other spaces within 600 feet of the building which aren't required, but will be provided with this project as well.
Thank you.
And it will accommodate the number of units that I have.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on item number 3? If not, we'll move on to requirement number 4. The use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plan as submitted. Applicant, comments?
I mean, you know, for us, the idea that David has really refined this idea of this is how you come in, this is where you go, this is where you park, these are the rules, and has been doing that for many years, to us makes it, when this whole project would be put in place, to make that much more seamless than starting afresh with, you know, how do we make this work? He's already got a process in place that makes that work.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience that would like to comment regarding requirement number 4? If not, we'll move to number 5. The use will not substantially reduce the value of adjoining or abutting property, or that the use is a public necessity. And there are 2 questions in that particular requirement, and we are basically going to deal with them when we vote in 2 parts for the record. So, but the main thing we're going to be addressing with this particular project is that the use will not substantially reduce the value of adjoining or abutting property.
And, you know, for us, the idea is that we really are creating a higher and better use for the space that is currently there, and, you know, while maintaining a portion of the retail business that's there currently. And so that it will actually improve that value, plus bring in more people into downtown. And I mean, people just can't say enough good things about coming into downtown New Bern. And so for us, this is a continuation of that, you know, bringing people into downtown being a good thing.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment about requirement number 5, property values? Okay, we'll move on to number 6. The location and character of the use, if developed according to the plan submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located and in general conformity with the plan of development of the city. Sarah?
You know, for us, you know, making just a space where more people can come and enjoy downtown New Bern is really what this is about. Just having a better use of that space that is currently to us underutilized.
Anyone in the audience like to comment on requirement number 6? If not, we will conclude public comments, and I would entertain a motion to close the public comment period.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Like sign. Public comment period is hereby closed. Okay, board, it's now up to us to have discussion regarding these 6 requirements that we've just heard comments from the applicant and none from the general public. So we'll go back through the requirements, and at that time it'll be open for board discussion or additional questions if anybody has any. Okay? Okay. First requirement, the requested permit is within its jurisdiction according to the table of permissible uses. Any questions from the board regarding that? Okay. If so, I would entertain a motion that
Okay,
on
Mr.
item
Chairman,
number 1.
I move we find the requested permit is within the jurisdiction according to the table of permitted uses.
Okay, we have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, Nadia?
Kit Paragoy,
Yes.
Richard Parsons,
Yes.
Dorothea White,
Yes.
Alfred Barfield,
He's not here.
Peter Dillon,
Yes.
Jim Morrison,
Yes.
John Riggs,
Yes.
Barbara Sampson,
Yes.
Ross Beebe, Jonathan Foster.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries.
Okay. Requirement number 2, the application is complete. Any comments, questions?
I have a question as the new guy. I do believe it's very complete, and I'm just wondering, in the final documentation, is the special use permit included in that as a legal document?
Or- I don't think I understand the question.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a, I want to answer that?
Hmm?
I can answer that.
Okay.
Sure. At the end, the board will go through the 6 questions and vote on
Oh,
each one of
okay.
them. And then there's another vote on if there's any special conditions that the board feels are appropriate to put on this site in order to make it more in compliance with the 6 criteria essentially. And at that point, after that, the vote is done and it's approved, and then I actually write up what the special use permit is, and then it gets entered into the record, so you don't really see it until you make it tonight, and then I formulate it.
Understood, and the purpose, or the point of my question was, it's a special use permit because it's a C1 zone.
Correct.
And, one of the answers was that it's allowed, the multifamily is allowed, but it isn't, that's why we're doing special permit.
That's
Is that
correct.
true?
Yes.
That's correct.
So it's only allowed with a special use permit.
Understood, okay. Just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you.
Cool, good question.
Okay, any other about the application? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move we find the application is complete.
A motion?
Second.
And a second.
Who
Roll
was the
call.
second? Who was the second? Peter. Thank you, sorry. Kit Paraguay,
Yes.
Richard Parsons,
Yes.
Dorothea White,
Yes.
Peter Dillon,
Yes.
Jim Morrison,
Yes.
John Riggs,
Yes.
Barbara Sampson,
Yes.
Jonathan Foster.
Yes.
Got them all right? Yeah.
That's the.
Okay, moving on to number 3. If completed as proposed in the application, the development will comply with all the requirements of this ordinance. Questions, conversation?
It's been to site review and apparently it passed all the city requirements, including HPC, et cetera.
The only comment that I would have is it does meet the requirements of the ordinance for parking, but 13 units with no parking is, but it does, that's in the ordinance that they can get away with that. But I think,
Yeah, the ordinance actually deals with a number of situations about flexibility and administration of parking. And so it's one of a number of,
yeah, I mean, but it does comply with the ordinance. It's just one of those things that this strikes me rather wrong, but that I had 13 units. I mean, I understand it with 4, it's a minimal impact, but with 13 units parking on the streets downtown, kind of bothers me, but it does not affect that it is in compliance with the ordinance. Okay. So is there a motion from the board about the application, the development will comply with the requirements of this ordinance?
I move that we'll comply.
Okay, we have a motion
Second.
and a second. Roll call?
Kit Paraguay,
Yes.
Richard Parsons,
Yes.
Dorothea White,
Yes.
Peter Dillon,
Yes.
Jim Morrison,
yes.
John Riggs,
Yes.
Barbara Sampson,
Yes.
Jonathan Foster.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Motion carries. Requirement number 4, the use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plan as submitted. Board, questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah, I have a question. whether it's stairs, because they'll be coming down some stairs, will they be stable and well lit so they can see where they're going?
Yeah. So there are two stairs on the project. One is an internal stair right here, and one is an external stair right here. And so that, absolutely, they are required by code to have, to be well lit and to have emergency lighting with them. But to answer your question shortly, yes, they absolutely would be. And they both meet the requirements of the code, which is to be accessible to a public way. So, you know, both sets will take people out in two directions, so you've got two options to get out of the building.
Okay,
As well as the sprinkler system.
Right.
okay.
I have a question. Reading it, I noticed that there's an existing elevator in the building. Does that?
No, we
there's
plan
not.
to put an elevator in the building,
Oh, okay.
yes.
Will that have? And I know the fire department has reviewed this. That will have a fire department priority
The,
access. Or?
the in-departmental review, the fire department is there, and they have certain requirements. One of them being a Knox box that is mounted on the front of the building. And so in that box are keys to the building, to the units, to the elevator, and that will be available to them.
Understood. Thank you. And I also noted during the fire department review that there'll be a sprinkler system.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Discussion amongst the board? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I move that it will not adversely affect health and safety of the public. Is that the correct way of doing it?
Oh,
It will not substantially, will not materially endanger the public health or safety.
if developed according to the plan submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Kip Paraguay.
Yes?
Richard Parsons.
Yes.
Dorothea White.
Yes.
Peter Dillon.
Yes.
Jim Morrison.
Yes.
John Riggs.
Yes.
Barbara Sampson.
Yes.
Jonathan Foster.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Requirement number 5, the use will not substantially reduce the value of adjoining or abutting property. And we'll deal with that as one question, and then for the record, we'll go have a second vote or motion on the comment that it is not, or is a public necessity. So, conversation about values to adjoining and abutting property.
There's no evidence submitted to say it would alter the value.
If no further discussion, I entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, the use will not substantially reduce the value of adjoining or abutting property.
Thank you. Second. Yeah, that motion and a second on the first part of that requirement. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Kip Paraguay.
Yes?
Richard Parsons.
Yes.
Dorothea White.
Yes.
Peter Dillon.
Yes.
Jim Morrison.
Yes.
John Riggs.
Yes.
Barbara Sampson.
Yes.
And Jonathan Foster.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, and the second part of that requirement is the question that the use is a public necessity. And we're doing this for the first time on the advice of our city attorney. So we would also like to have a motion regarding that comment. And the motion would basically be that this project is not a public necessity.
So move.
Second.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second. Roll call?
Kip Paraguay.
Yes.
Richard Parsons.
Yes.
Dorothea White.
Question. What are we voting on? It is or is not?
That it is, the motion was that it is not a public necessity.
It is not a public
It's
site.
not.
Yes.
Peter Dillon,
Yes.
Jim Morrison,
Yes.
John Riggs,
Yes.
Barbara Sampson,
Yes.
Jonathan Foster.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, and thank you for dealing with that for the first time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that could have been really painful.
yeah. it could have
Well,
been.
what I understand is that if it had been a public necessity and devalued the property, we could still allow it.
Correct,
Is that?
correct.
Yep, that's the whole thing. That when you pass the first phase or phrases in that, you basically negate the second part of the question, but for the record, it was requested that we have a actual vote on the second element as well. Okay, requirement number 6, the location and character of the use, if developed according to the plan submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located and in general conformity with the plan of development of the city. Questions, comments, discussion amongst the board?
Similar to other features in downtown with residential units above retail. And it'll be really invisible to the public outside.
I would add that opening up the windows is in line with other rehabilitations that have taken place downtown. That removing the corrugated metal and what happened at the Athens Theater all improves the look of downtown.
So it's a commendable, not full of restoration, but a commendable
The
change
building
in
is
the
going to
architecture.
look a lot better.
Any further comments, questions, discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion regarding number 6.
Mr. Chairman, the location and character of the use, if developed according to the plan as submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located and in general conformity with the plan of development of the city.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further conversation, discussion? Roll call?
Kip Paraguay,
Yes.
Richard Parsons.
Yes.
Dorothea White,
Yes.
Peter Dillon,
Yes.
Jim Morrison,
Yes.
John Riggs,
Yes.
Barbara Sampson,
Yes.
Jonathan Foster.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, we have been through all 6 of the requirements with affirmative action taken by the board. And now we need to vote and entertain a motion and vote on the issuance of the special use permit based on our discussion and voting on the first 6.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we issue a special use permit for 309 Pollock Street.
Is there a second?
Second.
Instructions.
Some comment, did you want to bring up any conditions that the board would like to put on or not?
Well, we were going to do that in a minute.
Okay.
'Cause I think that's another process to go through. So the issuance of a special permit as applied for right now is what the question is, and that motion has been made and seconded. So if there's any further discussion amongst the board, if not, we'll have roll call.
Kip Paraguay,
Yes?
Richard Parsons,
Yes.
Dorothea White,
Yes.
Peter Dillon,
Yes.
Jim Morrison,
Yes.
John Riggs,
Yes.
Barbara Sampson,
Yes.
Jonathan Foster.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. And now is the time, Peter, if there is any conditions or other comments that we would like to apply to the special use permit when Jeff writes it up, is what we're going to discuss now. Whether there are any, if the board feels that there are any special conditions that we need to apply to this special use permit to make it even better than what it is proposed to have been, or to meet other needs within the location where it is that might further enhance the project. Anyone have any thoughts?
Well, Mr. Chairman, no evidence was submitted to indicate any parts of the requirement have not been met.
Okay. So the motion would be that we have no conditions to apply to the special use
Well,
permit?
that's my comment. But
Okay,
that's-
oh, okay.
Mr. Chair, my comment is, I think we should address permanently somehow the accommodations for the tenants, if there should be all units rent at the same time. I think it would be an inconvenience for the potential customer to have to look for or find a place to park. So I do believe somehow we do need to accommodate the potential renter when it comes to parking.
Okay.
While I agree with Ms. White 100%, I don't think we have the statutory authority to impose a 13 parking place requirement on this special use permit.
Well, you mentioned that you were parking in parking lots, right? Like, you had some lots around that they were parking in if you had too many?
I'm glad to speak.
Yes, come forth, David.
Again, I would be foolish, as I heard, to think that I could develop a piece of 13 plus 4, 17, plus other properties that I have that I lease out, and not provide a safe place for them to park. In my plan, I do have 4 spaces out back. As I've done for years and been on every parking committee in downtown New Bern, I feel like, work towards enhancing our parking. I did vote for the, and push to get the restrictions in place now, the enforcement in place now. And yes, I do plan on providing my guests parking. Again, my plan is simple, to have the 4 spaces be there for drop-off, pick-up. If I have handicapped or older folks, I'll devote 3 of them. And again, Sarah said it, I'm there every day. I plan on being there. I plan on being there a while. And simply to direct the people to where to park, whether it is a public space, whether it's an own street, whether it's in a rented lot that is within, and I take the 600-foot rule. It's not required by me, but I followed that, and I do plan on providing that. If someone, and again, without owning property to provide parking, someone could buy that piece of property that I'm gonna rent, then I'd have to go and find something else. But I do plan on providing it. I don't see it as a tremendous, I don't see it as a problem. For instance, if I go to Raleigh or Charlotte, I might have to walk to a parking deck that might be 800, 1,000 feet away to get back to my hotel where I stay or to my apartment where I'm staying. 800 or 1,000 feet in downtown New Bern, you'll be on the other side of town. Not an inconvenience. And providing that on the street, in the back drop-off area, handicapped accessible, everything that is offered will be in place.
So would there be any way that one of your tenants could rent property on one of these lots that they're parking in and say you have 8 spots on that lot devoted to your tenants? I mean, and then charge them for that parking spot so that they know they have a spot?
I've had short and long-term tenants. I've been in place since 2003 doing residential apartments in downtown New Bern. Have always accommodated them in a long-term space, a short-term space.
That you rent or own, or is this just
whether I lease
point
it
of?
from someone and let them park there, whether I let them lease it, I put them in contact. There are a multitude of public and private parking spaces. If I had to take an educated guess right now, within an 800-foot range of my building, there are probably 120 to 150 available spaces for rent.
Or rent, okay, so
For
there
rent.
are available for rent, but
Yes.
now they won't be renting through you, they'll have to rent through different.
I will provide my people parking, yes.
So they'll be.
You don't control parking for your, right now, is that what you're saying? You don't either own or have leases on parking spaces?
I have 4 spaces that I own.
Okay.
And I have 20 spaces that are available to me on a trade. I barter sometimes. And I have bartered in the past, and I have access to 20 spaces.
Is that in the area behind your building, Morgan's, and
Yes.
that area through in there?
Yes.
Okay. Which would be reasonable
Which is as
accommodation?
convenient as here to the street outside.
But I think from our point of view, we would really request to just be in keeping with the ordinance. You know, David has a plan in place, but to make that requirement that it be, you know, a condition of the special use permit to us is something that is, it's a bit above and beyond. You certainly can, and he certainly planned for it. We would rather see you all, you know, say that David has a plan in place. The city also is still looking at a plan in place for whatever parking issues there are, to not lock him into having to do something at this moment in time when it's not particularly an issue. Hasn't been an issue so far that there are parking spaces available within the district, within walking district, you know, within walking.
And with that said, on the reviews that I receive, because I do have short-term stays as well, every review, again, I've been able to park with no problem, never been given a ticket since 2003. I know enforcement came and went, but recently, no ticketing. Everyone, never had a problem, even on holiday weekends, month-est weekends. I've always accommodated my people. And yes, you're right, 4 people versus 17 units. There is a big difference there.
Yeah.
But not a problem to me. I've been doing this since I was a kid. I continue to do it.
But I do think Mr. Parsons is correct, though. The ordinance says in the central retail core, they define it, they shall be exempt from off-street parking requirements. So I don't know how you could have a restriction that is
As much as I
contrary
agree,
to
what he
an
says
ordinance.
is right, it's our hands are tied. By ordinance.
Jeff, do you have a comment on that for
Well,
clarification for the board?
Yeah, if the board finds that this project is exceptional in some way, in that 17, at least 17, I'm not really sure. Sarah, is it all one bedrooms?
No.
So Kip, you did the parking calculation?
Mhm.
And what was that number?
Well, it depends on whether they were multifamily or short-term rental.
Well, they were multifamily to us, because we don't.
Well, I know, but all their paperwork said rental units, so I didn't know what they were to start with.
Yeah, it's multifamily is what they're asking for.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're in
That number's about 15 units.
15 parking spaces.
Yeah.
And
So,
you know, with-
15 parking spaces, some extraordinary number that you feel that you need to mitigate? That's the question the board has to answer.
Well, the question is whether we have statutory authority to apply a condition when it's against the ordinance as it's written.
Again, like I said, you have to find something. If somebody came in with 400 parking spaces, would that be exempt? If they went through a special use permit, the ordinance said they would be exempt, but that would be considered extraordinary, in my opinion, and something downtown that required 4, 5, 6, 700. Right now, we're looking at 17 spaces or something like that.
This project is 13 units.
13 single families, 13 one-bedroom units.
13 units. Well, no, they're,
Seven-
four
seven-
of them are 2-bedroom.
4 of them are
17
two-bedroom,
beds,
right? So
17
we
beds.
can easily get a number. We don't need to mush around here. 2 bedrooms, 2 spaces, so 4 to 8. So your 2 bedrooms require 2 apiece, and then your rest require 1.
So that's
17. So 17 spaces would be required if they were outside of the district.
Outside of the C1 downtown.
Correct.
How long are your typical stays?
My average stay right now is 3 days.
Okay, so it's more like I guess what I've read, Airbnb type. So are you,
Short-term rental.
okay. So if you had someone say rent, let's say they want to go a year out, would you be able to release one of your 4 spots to them? Depending on
In
certain-
certain cases, like I have one right now, I've got a lady that's displaced by the hurricane, and she has rented an off-site spot. Again, with 120 to 150 spaces within, and
think with your short term, you're in good shape, because, I mean, from past experience, I've leased for, a year and a half or so in another area, and they provide the parking, but you say most of yours are 3 days, I mean, that's more than likely people aren't going to try to find a spot every time, though. They're good with just parking wherever they can be, so.
I direct them all where they need to park.
Okay.
And are all of your available parking places, do they meet handicap code? Do any of them meet handicap code requirements?
I mean, there are, we have provided a handicap spot in the rear of the building.
One of the
that does-
4?
Yes, one of the 4
Okay.
that does meet that.
Okay.
That covered my question. I didn't want to make it I wasn't going for a condition, but just a clarification that there would be an ADA compliant parking spot in the 4 existing things, but you just answered.
I think to Mr. Ruggieri's point, 17 spaces, given we've added 3 new parking lots in the last 2 years. And I can speak to the farmer's market one, never full.
Yeah, but do you want to lug your suitcase from the farmer's market
Well,
up
you're
to
not
Branson?
lugging, you're dropping your luggage. I mean,
I understand, but
Yeah,
I've stayed at places like this and had to walk in 20-degree weather farther than that.
but that's why we have the drop-off area
Yeah.
too, so that's not as much of an issue.
You know, if you think, well, bed and breakfasts and that aren't necessarily in areas with lots of parking, you're gonna have drop-off and then walk, and you're downtown, you're not isolated. But we've
bed
added
and breakfasts have their own parking requirements, as do Airbnb per bedroom, unless, I guess, unless they're in this C1 zone,
well,
which is.
Airbnb doesn't have
We don't
requirement.
have, Airbnb doesn't exist.
Yeah, it
for us.
doesn't
Well,
exist, yeah.
But the bed and breakfast code
Correct.
Right.
that
This
we've
is not,
addressed
this is
before.
not a bed and breakfast.
I understand,
Yeah.
we're just having a general conversation that bed and breakfasts do have bed per room parking requirements. We know it's
Yes.
not bed and
Yeah,
breakfast. I don't see David up cooking breakfast in the morning, so. Yeah. Okay, we've had a robust discussion about possible conditions. The chair will entertain any motions put forth at this time about any conditions that might be applied to the special use permit.
Seems to me no motion is necessary.
Okay, I mean, that's,
If there's no
if
conditions.
none come forth, then there are none, you're correct.
That's correct.
Okay, so there being no conditions being spoken for, then the special use permit will have no conditions attached to it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
thank you.
As we mentioned earlier, we are not going to adjourn this meeting this evening. I would like to have a motion to continue the regular meeting, continue this meeting until October 15th, 2019 at 6 p.m. at City Hall Boardroom, located at 300 Pollock Street here in New Bern.
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
to continue this meeting, and then we have a second. All in favor of continuing this meeting until October 15th, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we will continue this meeting. And that is the last item on the agenda for this evening.
All right, just say one word.
Sure.
On that item, I know, Mr. Parsons, you indicated that you would not be able to make it on the 15th.
That is correct.
Is there anybody else who knows right now that they cannot make it on the 15th? It's extremely important that you do, if you can. Okay?
Call the question.
Okay, thank you, Ross.
Call the question.
Okay,
We've already had
that
a
was the
question.
statement, doesn't need anything.
Yes, we did. It's in the
Wasn't
voice
that-
note.
Not with a continuance.
Yes, we did. Didn't we have a voice vote on the continuance?
No, yeah, no, you
Yeah, we
voted,
did.
yeah.
Yeah,
It just was a
yes.
roll call.
It wasn't a roll call, what was it? Just a voice vote.
Yeah, this is.
We may adjourn. We adjourned? Are we still talking? Oh, no, we're not adjourned.
We're not
No,
adjourning.
we're not
That's,
gonna
they
say
don't,
it.
that's a bad word. Do not say adjourn.
Continued until the 15th.
Continuing.
Yeah.
All that work and I almost blew it.
Yeah.